So tell me how,
Yeah.
as a 54-year-old postmenopausal woman who works out a ton, what do I do for my fascia?
So I've written 2 books on self-myofascial release, and I've written a chapter in a medical textbook called Fascia Function and Medical Applications on self-myofascial release. So unfortunately, you are going to hear about rolling.
No, I know.
Maybe not foam rolling, because I'm not a foam roller person. I like a smaller profile tool. I like a gushy, pliable tool that mimics human hands rather than feels like you're being, flogged by a bat. Yes. Or by PVC pipe, because texture matters and hardness matters. And this is I think a really interesting thing to look at. Many people have a recoil when they hear foam rolling because it freaking hurts.
It hurts.
Why does it hurt?
Yeah.
It hurts because your body, it hurts because when something is too hard for your nervous system, for your stretch tolerance, for your pressure tolerance, your sympathetic nervous system says, no, go there, protect, defend. And that's called your muscle bracing response. So when you get on a foam roller and you put it on a body part that is extremely tight and rigid, the roller touches it, your nervous system says, this woman is trying to harm me. So I am going to stiffen in order to not let this implement go into my body. And so you're just rolling against your own tension. You're at war, literally at war with your tissues and your nervous system. This is not a therapeutic response. So what we want to try to do is emulate as carefully as we can tender touch that disarms this stress response, because it's really hard to relax, let go, receive therapy when you're at odds with the therapy.
Right.
So I'll just show you. I have a fleet of balls called the role model balls. This is a small one. This is a yoga tune-up ball, but they're gushy and they're grippy.
Yeah.
And what that means is when they roll against soft tissues like muscle bellies, or they roll up and against bony junctions like your spine or your shoulder or even your face or your foot, there's a yielding so that the bony prominences don't just pinch and annoy and get bruised by like a lacrosse ball or a foam roller, but there's a compliance of your soft tissue and the tool. And so you can adjust your autonomic nervous system, your stress response, you can enter into a relaxation response, and then it really feels like you're getting massaged by a pro, but it's you doing it yourself, which is very empowering. And so returning to our talk about the fascia sites and the fibroblasts, because estradiol is waning, is removed, we don't have this sea that we're swimming in anymore. Instead of relying on chemicals to touch the cells, we now rely on pressure to touch the cells. This is called mechanotransduction. So the pressure from the rolling can stimulate the fibroblasts to do the right thing, to maintain elasticity in our tissue. Because if you're giving a signal to these cells that they need to maintain elasticity, they will. But if you'll maintain stiffness by staying stiff. You'll maintain elasticity by introducing movement, by introducing elasticity to the tissues via compression, via shear. There's many different applications that I go over in my work.
So you know what it reminds me of? One of the research articles that really shocked me that I found at the beginning of 2023 was a real in-depth look at how estrogen and progesterone stimulate a lot of neurotransmitters. So if we just stay on the estrogen path, estrogen stimulates, estradiol specifically, stimulates dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, oxytocin, BDNF. I mean, so when she goes away, you're losing all these other neurotransmitters. And so there needs to be a lifestyle that fills in to be able to support each one of those neurotransmitters. So like serotonin, really interesting thing about serotonin is actually eating carbs. If you eat poultry, specifically something that's high in tryptophan, and then you follow that up a couple of hours later with carbohydrates, you actually use the carbohydrate to convert tryptophan into serotonin, is another study that I found. Okay, so how many women as they go through menopause understand, oh, I may not be happy right now because I've lost estrogen that has decreased serotonin. So I need to look at what I can do and hack in strategies like I just gave you to bring up serotonin. What I just learned is that if we are getting that same response in the fascia, then we need to backfill in with something like the yoga tune-up balls to be able to stimulate the fascia in a manner in which estradiol was doing, but she's now gone.
Right. And so we're using pressure to do that, right? Pressure,
Yes,
shear,
I love that.
deep touch, and novel touch, because your brain really, you're a sensory thing. My body thinks and feels. So this really helps excite your brain about these new sensations from within your body. And I mean, we use the balls all over. I have a special one, this one called the Gorgeous ball. This is all over the trunk. And so you can pressurize your rib cage, your lungs, your heart, all these deep core muscles, your organs, your viscera. Manipulating this is very helpful for digestion. I know that's something that's really important to your listeners.
Yeah.
Also mobilizing the colon and so on. But I have a menu of 5. It's called the 5 Ps of the parasympathetic nervous system that I think is very easy for people to create for themselves to induce this relaxation response. And rolling is included. But I think that to back up, like what you're saying, to back up in a mechanical way, I call this the 5 Ps of the parasympathetic nervous system.
Ooh, tell us.
So the first P is perspective. So perspective means you introduce a mindset that makes you aware that you are trying to become aware of the experience of your body. And so one of the Ps that I work with all the time, because I actually live with a lot of high anxiety, a long childhood history that's brought me to this point in life. But I like to say to myself, all of me is welcome here. All of me is welcome here, so that I allow for the experience of my body to speak whatever it might need to as I'm going through this process. And so perspective, another simple perspective could just be, I'm a student of my body, or I embody my body.
I love that.
Just to welcome the feelings to come up, and whatever the feelings are. Sometimes they're emotions, sometimes they're feelings of eroticism, sometimes they're feelings of owie, sometimes they're feeling of pain, sometimes they're memories. So that's the first P. The second P is place. In order for your body to enter into the relaxation response, the therapeutic response, the environment that you're in is very critical. And ideally, you're in a place that's safe to you, a place that's quiet, and even maybe a little dark, or relaxing. So that's a relaxing environment where you feel safe. So we have our perspective, we have our place. The third P is position. And position takes into account how blood pressure is calculated by your body. And so the easiest position is recline. Get down on the ground. Yeah. Now, if you lay down or you lounge back, you're typically going to have a more relaxed experience physiologically, because your diaphragm is offloaded from its postural component. Your heart rate will slow down. Your breath rate will slow down. And then from where I come from, if you're really want to induce the relaxation response, you might even raise your pelvis higher than your heart, higher than your head, like by putting your pelvis up on a yoga block or a stack of books, or, put it on the Gorgeous ball. And that way you're in this gentle slope. And that takes advantage of something called the baroreceptor reflex. But anyway, that ignites the vagus nerve, your major parasympathetic nerve, to really slow down the heart rate, to really slow down the breath rate. Okay, so those are some organizing principles. We've got perspective, place, position. The fourth P is pace of breath. Breathing is free.
Yes, it is.
Breathing comes with no bells and whistles. I mean, except whistling. You can always manipulate the pace of your breath to adjust state. Now, it's easy for me to say. It's not always easy to do, especially if you are in the throes of a panic attack. But typically, we can induce a relaxation response by extending our exhalations, just making them a little longer than the inhale that we breathed prior. So if you can consider that, trying to blow out, get the wind out, get the candles on the cake out, making that happen longer than inhale. And there's so many, I wrote a 480-page book about different breathing
Ways
practice
you can do that.
that yes, like that also, especially for people who have what I call breath-induced anxiety. So some people, when they're told to breathe, that actually spikes their threat response. And so sometimes we have to take breath off the table and go right to the fifth P, which is palpation. And palpation is what we've been talking about. It's inducing pressure into your body in novel ways that delights the brain or confuses the brain and allows these pressures to help also cascade you into relaxation response. And in my most recent work, there are these portals that pressurize mechanical places where your vagus nerve is available, and that can hasten even more relaxation. So these 5 Ps of the parasympathetic nervous system, when you compound them, it is like your inner medicine chest. So it's not like taking Klonopin or whatever. You're actually creating an internal environment for your physiology where you are crafting this calming response, and you're getting body work done in the meantime. So the 5 Ps again, it's perspective, place, position, pace of breath, palpation.